रति सुख सारे गतमभिसारे रति सुख सारे गतमभिसारे मदन मनोहर वेशम्।
itihasa puranaabhyam vedam samupabrimhayet bibheti alpashrutat vedat mamayam praharishyati. It is one of the very tricky as well as a very celebrated verse by Vyasacharya. We have analyzed the two itihasas. Itihasa as a category has two works. One is Valmiki's Rāmāyana and second is Vyasacharya's Mahābhārata. These two comprise the itihasas. And the other set is the Puranas. Itihasa is a report of what is happening in a person or a group of people's life as and when it's happening. So Valmiki reported Rama's biography as and when it happened. Same is the case with Vyasacharya. But Purana, incidents have happened, truly happened, but they have been narrated one generation after the other and it will be compiled in some generation. So a Purana typically will be like a person asks the other a certain set of questions and the person who's going to answer those questions would say that the same set of questions were asked by one of my predecessors to his gurus and this is what he replied. So it goes a set of question and answers one within the other. So it is passed on after generations. So there is a slight amount of variation that you may see within stories of Puranas. So how many Puranas do we have and what is Purana? Pura api navam Puranam. Nava is new. Pura, old. That which is old, which has been narrated to us in a contemporary new fashion is a Puranam. So how many Puranas do we know? Our ancestors, our Acharyas have generally approved of 18 Puranas. And these Puranas have been classified based on the gunam, the quality that it tries to bring from us or within us as a listener or a practitioner. There are three gunas: Sattva guna, Rajo guna and Tamo guna. So those Puranas which bring the Sattvika quality are Sattvika Puranas. Those that bring the Rajoguna are Rajasa Puranas. That which brings the Tamoguna are Tamasa Puranas. Sattva guna is that which brings peace, calm, tranquility. Rajo and Tamogunas have to deal with anger, lethargy, laziness. So we have the 18 Puranas distributed into 6, 6, 6. Sattvika Puranas are 6 in number, Rajasa Puranas are 6 in number, Tamasa Puranas are 6 in number. Just because they are Tamasa and Rajasa, it doesn't mean they are not to be accepted. They are also equally important. So Puranas mention a lot of incidents and legends. So we will be discussing a few famous and celebrated ones and what we need to analyze critically from them so that we can relate them or those morals in our everyday life. So this verse that I said, itihasa puranabhyam vedam samupabrimhayet bibheti alpashrutat vedat mamayam pracharishyati. So what it says is, itihasas and Puranas came to this world to help we the human beings to understand Vedas and Vedangas better, because Vedas are very cryptic in nature. So if they are cryptic, there are prone to be many interpretations and many misinterpretations. Only when they are exemplified through the biography of people and legends of people will we be able to understand the true purport of such statements. So now we will begin with certain avataras that have been mentioned in many Puranas. Incidentally, the avataras that we are going to see also have Puranas in their name. For example, we are going to discuss 3 avataras now: Matsya, Kurma and Varaha. Incidentally, each of these avataras have a Purana in their name: Matsya Purana, Kurma Purana, Varaha Purana. But don't assume that those Puranas will talk only about Matsya, Kurma or Varaha. They will talk about a variety of things. Largely the narrator will be the Matsya, the narrator will be the Kurma, the narrator will be the Varaha. So let's take up Matsya avatara first. There is a verse that beautifully describes the essence of Matsya avatara. Nirmagna shruti jala margana dasha dattakshanayir vikshanayhi antastanvadivara vindagahanan audanvatinam apam nishpratyuha taranga ringanamithaf pratyudha pathaschatam Dolaroha sadohalam bhagavato matsyam vapuh patunaha. Matsyam vapuhu. I now meditate upon the beautiful, pleasing form of Matsya, says the poet. What does Matsya avatara have to do? Nirmagna shruti jala margana dasha dattakshanayir vikshanayhi. This avatara is attributed to two reasons. One, it is said that once while Brahma was reciting the Vedās, he is called Chaturmukha. Every phase is dedicated to a certain Veda. So he comes up with this eternal, always present Vedic statements that he keeps reciting. So it is said that an asura called Hayagriva, this is very different from the Hayagriva avatara that we know of the Lord. Hayagriva, an asura, some call him Somakasura, he came and stole Brahma's knowledge. How can you steal somebody's knowledge? It is believed in the ancient Indian civilization that when you acquire knowledge, you should be attentive. And something that could make you lose attention or make you lose of what you've heard till then is a yawn. A yawn, right? So this yawning process takes away the memory that we have gathered. This is a belief. Now don't ask me where the research paper is. So Brahma must have yawned. He must have also got tired. So it is believed at that point in time he must have lost the knowledge, and that lost knowledge was gained by this asura. So he took away the Vedās, because Vedās we believe are just not manuscripts, they have life in them. You always throw life into a book when you are absolutely dedicated to it. That is when the Lord took the form of a very strong fish, went into the deep waters, fought the asura and brought the Vedās back. So this avatara denotes the process of knowledge being lost in one period and gained in the other period. This is very true. See, in our ancient Indian cuisine, be it the North Indian, the South Indian, Northeast, Gujarati cuisine, whichever cuisine you take. In the ancient days, we have always had the habit of using curcumin, which is turmeric, haridra. We have always been using black pepper. You will be surprised to know, till about 300 years, we never had green chilies in India. We had only pepper. Even in many temples in the south of India, for the Lord, when prasad is made, it is made only with pepper, not with chilies. So because pepper, besides being a spice, it adds the spicy taste. That's something hot. It is antiseptic in nature. So let us assume turmeric, let's take jeera, let's take black pepper, anything that we use in our cooking, in any of the cuisines in India, were infested with this. But over a period of time, we thought we should not have spicy food, we should not have food that has salt, we should not have bitter taste. So we went after sweet, and that's how we have ended up being the diabetes mellitus capital of this world. So we had a balanced diet. So there was knowledge about what is balanced diet, what spices should be used. That knowledge was lost. Now when there are scenarios of having epidemic, pandemic around the world, again we are back to that lost knowledge. So knowledge is lost, knowledge is gained. So there is a turning point to gain that knowledge. So it's believed that Matsya avatara does that. Why? Because again it's a belief in the ancient Indian literature, be it Sanskritam or the regional languages, that a mother fish doesn't cook food for her tiny fishes. She never cooks food. Our mothers cook food for us. She doesn't cook food. The little ones find their own prey and food. But something very surprising about the mother fish, which we believe in Sanskrit literature is, maybe medically it's untrue, in literature is, a mother fish always looks at her little ones with a lot of love and grace. As she looks at them, her eyesight itself, her grace itself is more than sufficient to give them the nutrition and strength. Again, this is partly found in human beings as well. An infant that keeps crying, whatever the father does, whatever the grandparents do, nothing stops the child from crying. Whereas the mother comes and looks at the child, even if the child had wanted milk or food or some porridge, the child will stop for some time. She or he will reduce the intensity of the cry, because the mother's very presence, her eye glances are enough to protect the child. So this is Matsya Avataram. I mentioned there's another reason for Matsya Avataram to have emerged. It is said that there are instances where the world undergoes partial destruction. There will be floods, there will be tsunami, many villages will get drowned, many cities will get drowned, new cities will emerge. You will find in some places the sea withdraws, you will find a new island emerge. There are places where the waters are so rough and tough that they will cover cities and the city gets submerged. So these partial destructions are called Pralayam. And it is said in one such ancient Pralayam, in order to keep the creation going, the Lord said, take specimens of plants, some useful plants and some animals, put them all onto a large boat, and let the boat have a rope that's attached to my horn. That fish had a horn. So the Lord came as a fish with a horn, a single horn, Ekashringam, and that boat was taken atop because all the other places started getting flooded. Imagine that there was excess heat, global warming, the glaciers started melting, there was excess flow of water, cities and towns got submerged, the fish was trying to pull the boat, it was reaching a place of high altitude, the rishis survived, so did the specimens, and then after when things came to normalcy, they continued the process of procreation. So this is another reason attributed to Matsya Avataram. Now let's go to the next avataram, which is Kurma Avataram. Here is the verse. Avyasurbhuvanatrayim anibhritam kanduya nairandrina nidranasya parasya kurma vapusho nishvasavatormayaha yadvikshepana samskrutot adhipayah prenkhola paryankika nityarohana nirvruto viharate devasahaiva shriya. So here the avatar of Kurma, Kachapa, comes in Rāmāyana's Balakandam, it comes in Mahābhārata's Adi Parva, it comes in most Puranas, it comes in Vishnu Purana, Bhagavata Mahapurana. Because this Samudra Manthanam, this process of churning of the Kshira Sagara, or the oceanic waters, was very important. Of course, Indra had lost wealth and he was cursed by Durvasa to lose wealth because of his arrogance, and all the lost wealth. He had a wish-yielding cow called Kamadhenu, a wish-yielding creeper called Kalpaka, a wish-yielding stone called as Chintamani. All of it was lost, and in order to gain the lost wealth, the oceanic waters were churned, and as they were churned, these objects arose. But how did the churning happen? Who guided them? The Lord, when they all surrendered to the Lord for his intervention, that is when he said, you will have to get the lost wealth. They are all hidden in some forests and some waters. Only when you churn will they be excited and they will all come out. So the Devas, the Suras, had to have a correlation with the Asuras, their own step-brothers. And so as they churned with Mandara, the mountain, as the churning rod, and Vasuki, a snake which was coiled around as the rope, many things emerged. So this entire process of churning, you can call it as very colorful and eventful again. There was a poison that emerged, and Hala Hala was the name of the poison. It was like Kalakuta Visha, poison, very, very virulent in nature. That is when Lord Shiva when everybody was ready to accept various treasures, here is Shiva who wanted to protect the creation, and he consumed that poison. Keshi vishasya patrena rudrena apibatsaha, says Rig Veda. Then of course emerged the Chintamani, the Chudamani, the Kaustubha, the Kalpaka Vriksham, Kamadhenu, so on and so forth. And as they all emerged, they gave a lot of strength to the Devas and the Asuras. And below we had Kurma, who was the base to the mountain and did not allow it to drown. This Kurma avataram, which the Lord took, was to not let their efforts go in vain. And the poets on a lighter note would always state that the Lord wanted to get his back scratched. So he went as a Kurma, and as the mountain was churned, the oceanic waters were churned with the mountain, that scratch was enough for the Lord to snore, and that snore was let into the waters, and that became the waves. So this is all an imagination of the poet. But Kurma Avatara has something in store for us. It says that the prosperity or the wealth which you deem very important or perfect or very important in your life will go missing at any point in time, unexpectedly. And it's only through your hard efforts will you be able to take it out, get the lost wealth again. And it doesn't need only your hard work coupled with divine intervention. It was not only the Devas and the Asuras who brought the wealth out. They needed Paramatma Narayana's intervention as the tortoise, the Kachapa below. They wanted him as Ajita who would churn. They wanted him as the medical practitioner Dhanavantri who would carry the Rasayanam of Ayurveda in his hands. They wanted Mohini, the avatara of the Lord, to distribute the Rasayanam. They wanted the Lord, with the help of Garuda, to lift the Mandara Parvatam from its base, put it in the place of the oceanic waters, let it churn, and then put it back in its place. They wanted the Lord's intervention as grace on Vasuki the snake, so that he comes as a churning rope. So we have seen that Kurma Avatara, you see a lot of variety of wealth emerging, but it needed the intervention and the efforts of the people. So at the end of Kurma Avatara, when the churning happened, that is when Lakshmi emerged. Here we need to understand, when we say Lakshmi Kshira Samudra Raja Tanayam Sri Ranga Dhameshwarim, Lakshmi emerged from the oceanic water. It is not as if Narayana was not married till then, he was a bachelor. Lakshmi signifies wealth of every possible dimension. She will signify gold, she will signify silver, she will signify everything auspicious, pavitranam pavitramyo mangalanamscha mangalam. Everything which is auspicious. She also signifies education. See, let's not compartmentalize deities. Saraswati is for education, she has no money. Lakshmi is for wealth, she has no education. This is not the way we see, Shastras see. Kantaste Purushottama Phanipati Shayyasanam Vahanam Vedatma Vihageshwara Yavanika Maya Jaganmohini Brahma Ishadi Surabraja Sadai Tattva Sadasi Ganaha Shriritye Vachanamate Bhagavati Brumakatam Swami. Lakshmi, who is a repository of wealth, has valor in her, strength in her, education in her, wealth in her. So all that which we deem as wealth can be lost in a minute because of arrogance, like how Indra lost. And when you are in a vulnerable position, you should know how to respect even your enemies. Even such times, regard will demand your negotiation skills with your opponent. That's what Indra, the Suras, did with the Asuras. And just their efforts was not enough. The efforts of the divinity, Narayana, was needed. And you need to be as sacrificing as Shiva for the welfare of the world by consuming poison. He became Neelakantha because of this. So Samudra Manthanam is just not to describe how Kurma Avatara happened, but it suggests how efforts need to be taken. So Kurma Avatara is a befitting example for search, research, and our efforts in our life. And as we continue, we are going to go to Varaha avatara. Here goes the verse. Gopayeda nisham jaganti kuhana potri pavitri krita brahmanda pralayor mighosha gurubhir gona ravair ghurghuraihi yaddam shtrankura koti gadha ghatana nishkampa nityasthitihi brahmastambhamasauda sau bhagavati musteva vishwambhara. Vishwambhara, Mother Earth. She was to be protected. What happened there? There were two brothers. They were the sons of a great rishi called Kashyapa. They were born of Diti Devi. They were called Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyaksha. Hiranyaksha was called because probably he had eyes that were yellow in nature, that resembled the yellowness of aurum, which is gold. So he was called Hiranyaksha because Hiranya in Sanskritam is gold. Akshi means the eyes. So Hiranyaksha was a big menace to the society. He used to trouble people, anybody whom he saw, even the children, the women, none of them were spared. We have often heard that he wanted to trouble Mother Earth, so he lifted Mother Earth and kept into the oceanic waters. There are various points of contention and questioning here when we have to analyze it critically. How could an asura be so strong enough to move an astronomical body like Earth from its very movement, its place, and keep it in oceanic waters? Because as far as we have seen, known, felt, the oceans are on Earth. There's a Pacific, there's an Atlantic, there's an Indian, there's an Arctic. These are all oceans on Earth. So you take Earth and keep it into the ocean. Where is that ocean? Is that humanly possible? Even if he were the son of a rishi, however strong he was, how could he lift Earth? So we need to understand this from a very acceptable perspective. See, when we do changes to nature, nature should be left to itself. She has to be natural. When we coax, when we force changes to nature, she retaliates. Nature is also Earth. So it would have been such a scenario where that is Hiranyaksha, would have fought a lot of battles, would have burnt a lot of things, would have done everything possible inimical to nature. So much so that she would have started melting the glaciers around. The oceanic levels would have risen. And as they rise, the earth, the cities and the towns around or near her coast get submerged. So when land gets submerged in water, land is Bhumi, Mother Earth, she is submerged in water. Even if a city starts getting inundated with waters, I can say Mother Earth is submerged in oceanic waters. So if you look at the root cause of all this, it would have been Hiranyaksha's acts against nature, acts against scholars, acts against everything that was right and ethical for the society. So as cities started getting drowned, people started dying, they started losing lives and livelihood. So that is when Mother Earth, when she saw her very own children living on her getting affected and dying, she appealed to her Lord to come and save her. On the other hand, the Devas, the celestials, were also equally worried. They went and complained to Brahma, Brahma, you've taken so much of efforts to create this earth. Look at what shape she is in. She is getting submerged. So taking Mother Earth and putting into oceanic waters may not sound logical, but letting Mother Earth drown in her own oceanic waters may sound more logical. So that is when the Lord emerged from Brahma's nostril. When Brahma was equally worried about Deva's complaint that Hiranyaksha is doing all this harm to Mother Earth, he was equally worried. So as he breathed in and breathed out, a swine, a pig, jumped from his nostril and it grew to a very massive size, a gigantic size. He asked, "Who are you?" Mahābhārata sputa padmalochanaha, looking like the lotus like eyes of the pig, he understood it was Lord Narayana. But here comes a question, right? Why should the Lord emerge from Brahma's nostril? Anywhere else he could have emerged. See, it's very, very interesting to note who is suffering at the hands of the demon, Mother Earth. So in Sanatana Dharma, in Indian civilization, we have given a lot of importance to Pancha Bhutas, 5 elements of nature that we see around. There's space. When that word in Sanskritam is Akasham. So when we say Akasham in Sanskrit, it is not the sky. It is not the sky. It is space. Everything that you are around, what I see around, this is all space. What is filled in the space is air, Vayu. Then there's another element which is Agni, fire. There is water, H2O. There is earth, the earth that we see. So Akasha, Vayu, Agni, water, Apaha. Then there is Prithvi, which is Bhumi, earth. So there is a passage in Yajurveda from the Taittiriya Upanishad which goes like this: Akashad Vayuhu, Vayor Agnihi, Agneerapaha, Adbhyav Prithvi. This is how the elements emerged in this order. Akashat Vayuhu. From space came air. From air came fire. From fire came water. From water came earth. Sounds illogical. How can space give rise to air? How can air give rise to fire? No. Each of these elements have a distinct characteristic feature in them. For example, Akasham, space, has the property of sound. So for example, there is sound. How do I decipher or know that there is sound? So only when the space allows its transmission, so will I know that there is sound. So sound which comes to me is facilitated by Akasham. So what is that sense organ with which I can sense that sound? It is the ear. So there is space. Space helps transit that characteristic feature called Shabdam, which is sound, and I can sense it through my sense organ, which is the ear. What comes from space? Akashad Vayuhu, Vayu, which is air. What is special about air? Air has the property to let the person experience it or feel it. I can feel air, right? When I switch on the fan, I switch on the AC, I can feel air. So what is that sense organ in me which helps me sense air, which is the skin? So from Akasham comes Vayu. Vayu's property is to make one person feel. I feel using my skin. Next comes from Vayu, Agni. Agni, which is fire. What is the distinct property of fire? It has a form. I know where it's burning. Somebody burns an object, I can see the fire there. So there is a form it takes. So how do I sense that form, that rupam? Through my eyes. I have to see it. From fire comes water. What is distinct about water? Its taste. In the ancient Indian civilization, in most houses you had wells. So in certain houses, because of the sand quality, the earth quality, the water will acquire a certain taste. Water either gets sweet or salty. So there is a taste which is associated with water. How do I decipher that taste? Using my tongue. What is the last of the elements that we have discussed? Akashad Vayuhu, Vayor Agnihi, Agneerapaha, Adbhyav Prithvi. Last of it is earth. What is the distinct feature of earth? Smell. When there are first droplets of water, rain falls on Mother Earth, you have a distinct smell of earth. That Gandhavati Prithvi, that smell. How do I decipher smell? How do I understand smell? How do I know there's a smell? With my nose. Who is suffering at the hands of Hiranyaksha? Mother Earth. What is earth's distinct characteristic feature? Smell. How do I smell? With my nose. That is why, to protect earth, whose feature is to make the person smell, the Lord emerged from Brahma's nose. So there is a connection. So as he emerged, he fought the demon and restored Mother Earth. So he took the form of a Varaha, a wild boar, not the pig that we see in the countryside. In the forest there are wild boars. Poets say that it looked as if two crescent moons were attached to his face. With the sound of gur gurguraihi, says the poet, Ravair gurguraihi. Varaha came and protected Mother Earth. So how did he protect? By killing the demon, with a lot of community work or society work. People were restored of their lives and their livelihoods, and things returned to normalcy. So these three avataras, which is Matsya, Kurma, Varaha, often in that order, but the order in which the avataras took place is very different. We had Varaha Avatara first, Udritasi Varahena Krishnena Shatabahuna, then we had Kurma Avatara. Matsya Avatara was much later, but it is often said Matsya Avatara, Kurma Avatara, Varaha Avatara. Again, people associate this with the theory of a certain person who said that creations come as absolutely aquatic, then as amphibians like tortoises, and then marshy terrestrial nature, which is Varaha. That theory may have certain assumptions. We don't want to contend or prove that person who has propounded that theory of having aquatic, amphibian and terrestrial wrong. But these avataras did not happen in this order. When they have not happened in this order, we don't have to force another theory into these avataras. These avataras happened in their own pace, in their own order. So we have understood the purport or the essence of these three avataras in this module. Itihasa Puranabhyam Vedam Samupabrimhayet Vibheti Alpashrutat Vedat Mamayam Pracharishyati. This verse is commemorative of the service that is rendered to us by the Puranas. They are so benevolent to bestow upon us the quintessential knowledge of the various incidents and anecdotes that is associated with the Almighty. We have had the opportunity to briefly analyze the salient features of the avatarams of the Lord. Avataram, or the word avatara, signifies the process of descending. So when the Almighty chooses to be born amidst us, either as an animal or as a human being, the process of descending is referred to as avataram. Like how in chemical reactions we have reactants becoming products, and on certain conditions of either temperature, pressure, the products can also become reactants. Such reactions are referred to as reversible reactions. So we have had the process of avataram, which is descending, and going back to the abode from where the Almighty has come. The process of ascending is called bhavataram. We need to understand that these avataras, besides their very presence and the incidents associated with their presence, have something in store for us to learn. While we discussed Varaha Avataram, we spoke about a demon called Hiranyaksha. Often there is a misconception that asuras are people who have got horns on their heads, who have got tusks or overgrown canine teeth. They are cruel, they can get barbaric. This is our thought process of asuras. This has nothing to do with what they have been projected in our Puranas. Let's take for instance a rishi called Kashyapa Maharishi. He was a Prajapati. Prajapati means one who is in charge of producing children for raising a society. Prajapati, or the leader of the clan. So he was called Kashyapa Prajapati. He had many wives, and through one such wife called Aditi were born children that included Indra and his brothers. They were often referred to, that community, that group of the sons of Aditi and Kashyapa were often referred to as Suras. Likewise, he had another wife called Diti. That was Aditi. This is Diti. Through her, he produced many children that included Hiranyaksha, Hiranyakashipu, Viprachitti, and so on. So they were all referred to as asuras. They were a different group. They were half brothers to Indra, but they were a different group. They were born of one mother called Diti. So they called themselves, we are not suras. So we are asuras. There was another wife called Danu, and through her the children were born and they were referred to as Danavas. In most cases of our Puranas, the Danavas, the sons of Danu, and Asuras, the sons of Diti, often flock together. So there have been instances where a Danava has been referred to as an Asura and Asura has been referred to as Danava. But they were also normal people, sons of a learned scholar called Kashyapa. Not that they had horns. And not that we'll have to create a stigma for them, saying that all Asuras are bad and all Devas are good. No. We have had at least 7 to 8 instances where Indra has stolen the sacrificial horse, the Ashva of the Ashwamedha Yajna, conducted by various rishis and great kings. We have had Indra who has misbehaved with the wife of a rishi called Gautama. The lady was called Ahalya. We have had Indra who, out of greed, jealousy and arrogance, played havoc on the inhabitants of Gokula and Vrindavana until Krishna managed to rescue them. So these are all instances that clearly mention that Indra, though belonging to the Sura or the Devas clan, has been barbaric in many instances. So the misconception that Devas are very good, Asuras are very bad is wrong. We need to see that story to story, scenario to scenario. Let's take for instance Hiranyaksha, who was killed. Hiranyakashipu was angry, so he managed to convince his family members of the death of Hiranyaksha, but always wanted to avenge the death of his brother. And when he got to know that it was a Varaha, one of the incarnations of the Lord as a wild boar that managed to kill his brother, he wanted to avenge that. So he undertook severe austerities, tapasya. And here another point. When we read our Puranas and even itihasas, we come across the person who has composed, compiled or reported to us being very generous with numbers. He would state that this king performed penance for 1,000 years. He would say that the other king fought the battle for 10,000 years. It may seem to us, for purists, for traditionalists, for scholars who will never want to see even a bit go this way or that way from Puranas, would say yes, if the Purana has said 1,000 years, 1,000 is right. If it's 10,000 years, 10,000 years is right. But it may not hold water, because for example in Rāmāyana that we have already come across, Rama was married at the age of 12. He lived with Sita happily in Ayodhya for another 12 years. He had completed 24, and when he was commencing his 25th year is when he was ordained to go on an exile for 14 years to the forest. So he completed the exile while he was 39 years of age. Sita was then 33. So while they returned to Ayodhya and they were coronated as the king and the queen, they lived happily for another 2 years. That is when Sita was pregnant. So Sita was pregnant at the age of 35 and Rama was going to be a father at the age of 41. So that is when she was banished to the forest and she delivered her children Lava and Kusha in the hermitage in the ashrama of Valmiki. So while they were around 4 or 5 years of age is when they moved city after city, town after town, province after province, canvassing and professing the beautiful work composed by their guardian rishi called Valmiki, oblivious of the fact that they were reaching Ayodhya, which was their very own dynasty, and reading it before their very own father Rama. So then Rama manages to conduct an Ashwamedha Yajna, and then the Ashwa is held by Lava and Kusha. There is a battle between them all. Sita comes and stops, and then she goes back into the woods and Mother Earth, vexed with life's own turncoats. So all this happens when Sita is roughly 40-41. And then Rama, after having trained his sons, he attains Jala Samadhi by walking into the flowing waters of Sarayu. So this is where Valmiki says, Dashavarsha Sahasrani, Dashavarsha Shatani cha, for 11,000 years Rama ruled. So till Sita was off by her age of 41, Rama was then 47-48, and for another 10,952 years he ruled, which doesn't fit logic. Because if we would assume that in different yugas there were different spans of human life, we may be wrong. Yes, there could have been some humans, some rishis, some siddha purushas who could have managed to overlive. We had Bhishma who overlived. We had many rishis, Vasishtha, who lived during Rama's times and who lived during Krishna's times as well. Yes, they did a lot of tapasya, austerities, ashtama siddhi, yoga to perform. But generally kings who used to die in wars, battles, out of diseases, endemics, epidemics, pandemics. So what we need to understand is, when we speak of kings, their 1 year of regime, their 1 year of administration, when largely rendered flawless, with no scams, with no scandals, with no cases on them, with absolutely goodwill. So their 1 year could equal 50, 100, 500 or even 1000 years of any normal king. Because if you're a lethargic king, you may get to do welfare activities that is ordained for the subjects over a period of 50 years or 100 years. Imagine if you're a good king, you could do all of that in 1 year. So that 1 year could be equal to 50, 100, 500 or 1000 years. So Rama could have ruled for another 10 years after the going away of Sita, which is understandable, and then he would have attained Jala Samadhi. So when we speak of Puranas where Garuda does tapasya for 1000 years, in Gajendra Moksha the elephant was crying for help for over 500 years, all this needs to be understood relatively. Hiranyakashipu managed to perform penance to Lord Brahma, and as he was performing penance to Lord Brahma, there came an instance where Brahma had to appear before the asura. He was a Kashyapa. Kashyapa is a father. If you are sons of Kashyapa, you were called Kashyapa. So he appeared before Kashyapa and asked, what boons do you want? He said, I want to win over death. Brahma said, that is impossible, ask something else. So he said, I shouldn't be dying in the day nor during the night, neither inside the house nor outside the house, neither in space nor on earth, neither neither by an animal nor by a human, neither by an animate or an inanimate object, neither by something which is wet nor something which is dry. He kept on asking such boons, and Brahma was a bit shocked. Finally he said that I shouldn't be dying at the hands of anything that falls under the ambit of your creation. Nothing which you have created should kill me. So Brahma took a sigh. He thought that there's somebody who has created him who falls beyond the ambit of his creation. So he said, okay, I grant you these boons. So he reaches his sabha, and that is where he's surprised, shocked and gladdened. Surprised because by the time he returned, because while he left his wife was pregnant, and by the time he returned she had already delivered. Shocked because he got to know that Indra wanted to kill the very fetus, assuming that Hiranyakashipu's son will also be as bad as him. And further he was gladdened to see his very own son, who was called Prahlada. So at this point in time, one feature that I would like to highlight, because our Puranas state that just because we see a certain person, be it the man or the woman, of certain characteristics which could not be beneficial to the society, which could not be friendly to the society, we don't have to stigmatize their children. Their children don't have to mimic their parents. It is absolutely left to the karma of that child, the scenario in which he or she is brought up, the education that is being imparted to the child, and of course the child's own efforts to be a good human being. So if the father is a Hiranyakashipu, the son doesn't have to be Hiranyakashipu 2.0, another version of the father. That is very, very true in this case, because Prahlada, who was the son of Hiranyakashipu, was very different from the father. Again, the reason for him being different is not attributed to some magic concoction that he consumed. It is said that his mother Kayadhu, who was pregnant with him, was housed in the palace of Hiranyakashipu till a certain period of time, until she was abducted by Indra, and then she went to the ashrama of Narada. And Narada used to make it a point to read scriptures from the manuscripts, to discourse on various topics. So all this was heard by the mother, and eventually beyond a certain period, maybe the second and the third trimester, by the developing fetus. So the Indian civilization has believed that the quest for knowledge doesn't begin very late, when the person is going to become a senior citizen, a person is going to become an octogenarian. No, it has to begin at a very young age, even when the child manages to be a fetus in the mother's womb. Prahlada mentioned of two shlokas which is often quoted by commentators. One, this is a verse from Vishnu Purana, where he tells his father, the Lord is omniscient, omnipresent, sarvagnya, sarvavyapi, sarvashaktitva, omnipotent. This is what I've learned, father. Shasta Vishnu raseshasya jagadoyo hridisthitah tameva paramatmanam tata kahkena shasyate. This is what I have learnt, my dear father. I have also learnt the 9 different or distinct characteristics of devotion, which is bhakti. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakhyam, Atmanivedanam. Iti pumsarpitar Vishnor bhaktische nava lakshana. These are the 9 characteristics, my dear father. It's passionate listening. See, these are all skills that to us, we the listener, it may seem as if they are restricting themselves to the Puranas alone. No. It is very important in whichever profession that we are in. If we are a student, it is very applicable to that age or that stage. If you are a working professional, it is applicable to that stage as well. Shravanam, which is passionate listening. How much do I listen? How passionately do I listen? So physically present and saying that I've listened for so many hours is not going to help. Shravanam, Kirtanam, whatever I've listened, I spell it out. Vishnoho Smaranam, remembrance, continuous remembrance or contemplation of that Almighty. Pada Sevanam, to do utmost service. Archanam, to do archana. Vandanam, to put the palms together. This is an act which is very, very identical with the Indian subcontinent, rather a given of the Indian civilization, where you put your palms together. This is called Anjali Mudra. This is one of the easiest ways of expressing one's respect, regard, love and devotion to the person who's standing opposite, be it of any age or gender. Vandanam, Dasyam, the boy tells, Dasyam, to think that I am dependent on him, I am subservient to him. Subservience, the very word, is not negative in nature. It doesn't mean the one who is affluent is putting the one who is weak, meek, lesser privileged as a servant. Maybe that's applicable to some of the incidents that we see in the world history. But when it comes to devotion, there is absolutely nothing inimical, illogical to assume that we are dependent on the Lord, because the Lord, the Almighty whom we perceive, is treated as our mother, father, as our guardians and parents. So a child being dependent on the mother or the father isn't wrong after all. Dasyam, sakhyam. Treat the Lord as your friend. This is very, very unique to Sanatana Dharma, where we don't keep God at a very high pedestal. We keep him at par with us, and we start moving with him as if he were our friend. Sakhyam, he is our best friend. Only when he is your friend will you never want to seek benefits from him. It's just for friendship, that bond, that you're trying to be devoted to him. And it's only in friendship that you can always make fun of each other, right? See, Hinduism as a religion believes that devotion can be expressed in various forms. One such very rare type of devotion is Nindastuti, where you poke fun at the Lord. You say, oh Lord, while you were born as Krishna, you were stealing balls of butter. So stealing balls of butter, this is not something that you would want to praise your Lord with. But here, you praise the Lord as if he is your friend. This religion gives you the liberty to criticize God and to ask questions to God. Of course, you may or may not receive answers, but questioning is after all not bad. Atmanivedanam, sakhyam atmanivedanam, submit your Atma to him. So these are the characteristics, my dear father. This is what Prahlada told Hiranyakashipu. Hiranyakashipu was of course very angry at his son. He ordered that his son should be thrown from the mountain, bitten by the snakes, trampled by the elephants. All of these torture was meted by the very own father to his son. Prahlada's love was all permeating. He was able to showcase his love for the Almighty and for his creation, so much so that even the wild elephants couldn't trample him. Of course, we know the ending portion of Narasimha avatara of Prahlada's bhakti as well, wherein the father asked, if there is someone who's protecting you, my dear son, where is he? And that is when the boy said, he is there everywhere. There is no place in this universe which is bereft of his presence. And he is present in all points in time. And that is when he struck the pillar with his mace, the father Hiranyakashipu, and there appeared a creation. This is something very tricky, because we believe in what we perceive. I see a lion, I know there is a lion. I see a human being, I know there is a human being. But imagine that there is a human being with the head of a lion. So that may at a superficial level seem impossible, but what the emergence of the Almighty as an avatara of Narasimha, Narasimha, Nara is human, Simha is lion, manages to convey to us is, even if you try to envelope yourself of not being killed by anything around you and you want to win over death, death is always going to chase you, because the moment you're born, or probably even before you're born, there's somebody ready to inscribe on your skull, Vilupta Murdhanya Lipi, that you will be dead one day. So if there is birth, there has to be death. So there is no escape from death. Immortality could be for fame. Immortality is not for the material body. So Hiranyakashipu's incident, where the Lord appears as Narasimha, tears him open and kills him, and showers his mercy on Prahlada, is a standing example of how devotion is to the Almighty is so powerful. something that's very unique to Narasimha is the Lord in the form of a man lion appeared out of a pillar. So some of the scholars who have become poets out of their poetic fantasy have always felt that we as human beings or animals come from our mothers. But here is the Lord who's coming out of a pillar. So the pillar is regarded as the mother to the Lord in that particular incarnation. It could be a beautiful exaggeration and an imagination of the poet, but what's wrong if it's beautiful? So Narasimha is one avatara that comes for a very short duration but makes a very large impact. Here is one shloka that beautifully describes this avatara. Pratyadishta puratana praharana grama kshanam panijaihi avyatrini jagantya kuntha mahima vaikuntha kanthiravaha yat pradurbhavanat avandhya jathara yadrichikat vedasam yakachit sahasa mahasura grihasthuna pitamahya bhoot. Beautiful shloka. As Prahlada was made the heir apparent and the king, then he managed to run his administration, and then he had a grandson who was even more powerful, a devout person but very powerful as well as arrogant. So he was so avaricious of wealth that he would go and acquire wealth by illegal means. He was very powerful. He was called Bali Chakravarti, and Bali Chakravarti is said to have performed a yaga, one of the ordained rituals or sacrifices that was meant to make the monarch, the king, much more powerful. So his act or ritual of performing the yajna reached various quarters. That is when from a small place called Siddhashrama was Aditi and Kashyapa's son called Vamana. So the Lord again took an avatara, an incarnation, and the incarnation was that of Vamana. So he was called Upendra, Indra's brother, and the avatara was that of a Vamana, which means he was a dwarf. See, we do read in medical sciences that the pituitary gland is what that helps in the growth of an individual, the man or the woman. The pituitary gland is what is that which is responsible or determines the growth of the individual. So there are cases where the pituitary gland malfunctions. It doesn't function at all or functions very little. That is when the person, the individual doesn't grow. They have stunted growths. So that phenomenon or that particular disorder rather is referred to as dwarfism. And we know that Vamana, which in itself means dwarf. So this avatara of the Lord was like a dwarf. He wanted to be a part of the society by saying that I could be a handicapped person as well, a specially abled person as well. So why should I always be the very handsome Greek god like Rama? I could be a normal or even probably a specially abled person like a Vamana. So Vamana, who is now the Lord, born of Aditi and Kashyapa, goes to the Yajnavatika of Bali Chakravarti, because Bali Chakravarti was giving alms to people. So whatever they asked, he would give. So that is when the Lord asked for 3 pieces of land. What we understand from this particular juncture is Bali Chakravarti did not pay heed to this little boy's request. He thought, this boy is so little, what is he going to ask? So this is a big lesson for us. We can never determine the significance or the greatness of an individual based on the looks and the size of that person. He could be a giant but with no brains. He could be a dwarf but full of brains. So he paid no heed. He said, what do you want? The boy said, I want 3 pieces of land. He mocked at the boy. He laughed at the boy. He said, what 3 pieces of land? Which part of the land do you want? The boy said, I don't need the pieces of land that you offer from the wealth that you have amassed. I want 3 pieces of land that I will be able to measure with my foot. He was a dwarf. how much will his foot measure 3 pieces of land? It wouldn't be more than a few centimeters. Bali Chakravarti said, okay, now that you've asked, I'm ready to give. This is where we have another lesson, because Bali Chakravarti's guru, guide, spiritual guide, called Shukracharya, he comes and he says that this boy who has come, Bali, doesn't seem like just like another normal individual to me. I see a halo around him, an aura. I suspect that this could be the Almighty himself. Beware. There is some tactic, nuance in his statement. There is some tactic, hoax that they are trying to play on you. Don't give him whatever he has asked. Bali Chakravarti said, see, I don't know if he's Almighty, and even if it's Almighty, I don't mind giving him. So here is one person who stops the other from giving alms. Here is the other person who doesn't listen to his guru. So we don't know which is right or which is wrong, but both of them have been wrong in their own ways. So the very moment Bali Chakravarti promises to give the boy as he is desired, he calls his wife to come with a kamandalu, a jug full of water, because pouring water into the hands of the receiver in those days signified the promise fulfilled. So that is the one, that ritual is what commemorates the completion of giving alms. So water didn't flow. That is when Vamana could see that it was blocked by Shukracharya in the form of a bee. That's when he tried to use the darbha grass to clear the opening, and that pricked one of Shukra's eyes. So Shukra stopped the process of giving alms and he lost his eye. So there is an effect. The karma, the act of accruing punya or papa doesn't spare a person. Same is the case with Bali, because he had given away alms despite the warning given by his guru. Later, when he had to succumb to the Lord's completion of getting the 3 boons, he had to offer himself. Now comes another portion in Vamana avatara. You must have heard and read of all this. If the Lord who accepted alms from Bali started growing, we know that he came as a dwarf, now he became a giant. So he came as somebody who couldn't be seen. He was that small. Now he became so large that he couldn't still be seen. He was pervading the entire universe. So at that point in time, there are some kind of questions which crop in our minds. If he grew, why didn't his dress tear? Because as you grow, if I were to grow with the same attire, wouldn't my dress start tearing up? Why didn't the Lord's dhoti, his clothes, tear? Remember that all the properties that we know of the Lord, being omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient, of pervading the entire universe, of being all powerful, all of it that which is associated with him, all those properties or attributes that associated with him is also associated with his accessories. So if he grows, so does his attire. If he grows, so does his ornaments. So this is an act to say that don't think low of somebody. You don't know when they can overpower you. Here in this avatara, there is another question, because the boy who came there, the Lord who came as Vamana, asked for 3 pieces of land. So the Lord managed to say, see, I have measured the earth. When I say measured, it's not exactly measuring millimeter by millimeter or centimeter by centimeter. He placed his foot on the earth. And that is when it is said that earth was like a mustard seed that gets attached to our foot. It was that small. So he was that huge. So I measured the earth with 1 foot. I have tried reaching my other foot to the skies. So the upper worlds are all, the worlds that you know beyond are all measured by me in 1 step. The earth is measured in the other. Where is the next? So that is when we know that Bali Chakravarti offered his head there. But here we need to understand that while the Lord measured the earth, Bali Chakravarti was very much a part of it. So the earth was measured with Bali. It was not without Bali. So if Bali has to offer himself as that which needs to be measured for the third foot, wouldn't that be remeasuring? He's already been measured with earth. No, because Bali Chakravarti, though he was a part of this earth, he still had the arrogance that he was very different from earth. He was very different from others. He wanted special treatment. So the Lord thought, if you want special treatment, you need to offer yourself specially. So this avatara, Vamana avatara, again a very small incarnation, has a lot of morals and lessons for us. The next is an avatara, before which there is a beautiful shloka that describes Vamana avatara. Vrida viddha vadanya danava yasho nasira dhati bhataha trayaksham makutam punannavatu nastraivikramo vikramaha yat prastava samuchhita dhvajapati vrittanta siddhantibihi stotrobhis sura sindhu rashtasu disha saudheshu dodhu. Namaskaram. I am very delighted and indebted to all my friends, well, the word is Sishya, for sincerely attending and relishing the content of our Vedic civilization. I hope this is just the beginning of a long journey we have. So, Bhāratiya Sāra Bodhani level 1, level 2 will come up subsequently, and there will be an intense course on the philosophy, the theology, the secrets of Rāmāyana. Same is the case with Bhāgavatam and Mahābhāratam. So it's a journey that as a person who's going to dispense that knowledge, and as a student, a recipient, we'll all travel together. So in this journey, it becomes very important that I share what I know, what I have learned with you. And now that this is going to be a continuous process of dispensing knowledge, admissions, registrations for level 1 of Bhāratiya Sāra Bodhani is open for the subsequent batches. So my ardent request to all my dear Sishyas, the current Sishyas, would be to bring one student, one Sishya, a prospect Sishya from your family, one. If you have 2 or more, good. Tell your cousins, tell your relatives, tell your brothers and sisters. If my English is comprehensible, if the session is not very heavy, I'm sure even your parents and grandparents will like to listen to. As of now, the medium of delivery is English, simple English, Indian accent English. So we have over 20 nationalities listening, being registered Sishyas now. So for the subsequent batches, I would request you to kindly recommend more students to register, and let us travel this long journey together. Namaste.